Welcome back, everyone, to Tarot Journeys with Guy. How's everybody doing? Well, we are in the absolute fog of war. Here we are. The propaganda war is definitely taking place. Both sides are launching, right? The deep state. Now, they're the ones that are panicking, and it's very obvious. There's so much going on. There's been so much going on this last week. It's overwhelming, right? And that's the whole point, is to overwhelm the people. Now, that's where our focus has been, is on the deep state elements, the deep state bad actors that have been manipulating and pulling these agendas, pulling these operations, creating wars, creating the scenarios that we're living in. I think it's really important. I think this is what we were preparing for all the way leading up, was this campaign that they were going to, the next phase of their campaign against the people, and tricking us into the division that we're seeing. Now, no person in their right mind should be advocating for terrorism. So that's one element that completely exposed in the Western world, is how much these rogue elements are placed within our society. Like, these are people coming from the very top that advocate for this stuff, right? And so we've seen this all over the world. They got caught. Trudeau got caught again in part of the propaganda war with the hospital in Gaza, right? But this is part of their thing, to create the worldwide division and edging us closer and closer to a global war. On some level, like, we are winning this deep state shadow war, the people. It's happening. This is why they endeavored so heavily to censor, and this is why this next wave of censorship is on us. The censorship is to quiet those people like us that are there to expose them, that are there to ruin their plans. And it's so obvious. I mean, they really jump-started everything with COVID. And that was what we got to see. And it was a preparation up until now in a lot of ways. Because I've seen this happen with 9/11. They silenced enough people right at the beginning where they got away with it. They got away with it right away. Okay, and I'm of the nature that these deep state bad actors were the same kind of elements that are doing what they're doing, what's happening now in the world. It was an inside job. It, just like the assassination of JFK and his brother and MLK. There's so much that leads us up to this point that where we can sort of register this now, and that's what people need to sort of see. Parts of this Great Reset thing, it's happening, right? They're like, we're in the New World Order right now in a lot of ways. But see, that's the thing we got to really understand. We're in the fog of war. There's propaganda being thrown both ways, always. And it really is there to sort of divide us. And that's like the big takeaway on all of it. For me, I've never seen this thing as you need to just sit quietly and just trust everything, and President Trump's going to save you, and the military's in charge and all of that. I know I haven't fully saw it that way, and I've been active way before all of this started, but very active in my own way to bring awakening, to bring awareness to people, and to sort of end the research on my own end to sort of bring me up to speed with what's actually going on. Now, what's actually going on? Does any of us really know? Well, collectively, there are a lot of things that we know, that we've seen come to light. And that's what we have to stay with. And we have to realize that we are in the fog of war, of this propaganda war and information war. And the digital warriors, the digital side of it, is part of the psychological operations, is part of that, activating the populace. And that's why we have to kind of be very keen on the information that we're taking in and sharing, because it's part of that. It's a propaganda war. Behind the scenes of all of this, with the distraction of the war, is the push for, the push to continue a global climate agenda and a medical treaty and centralized digital currency, and this whole idea of plugging us as humans, as biological entities into the internet is still ongoing. This is still a process that behind the scenes they're working on. And that's the whole point. They're trying to cover their tracks, but also continuing to implement their agenda. That's what we got to keep our sort of eyes on. They're going to clamp us down into that global system if we're not mindful. And they're going to do it via war. It's already starting to happen. Now we're caught into this, back to like kind of a 9/11 sort of a scenario mixed in with the Iran hostage era, and then up the game, up the levels with that. And that's kind of where we're at again. And now the world's being divided between, do you support Israel or do you support Palestinian, Hamas, Iranian-driven proxy government, that kind of thing. And is that the real issue? No, it's not the real issue. The real issue is that they have pulled like one of the greatest experimentations on the human population, extermination program, bioweapon release through the vaccination, and all of the censorship and all of the lives that have been ruined because of the lockdowns, and behind the scenes of this public perception of a war. All of the information underneath is coming out of how much damage has been done, but it's being quieted. What does that tell you, right? But that's what we're dealing with. And so and the pushback is what actually has worked. It's just the very simple fact of people communicating and talking and refusing to shut up. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're just going to take a look at what's going on behind the scenes, kind of the usual. I want to see what they're actually doing behind the scenes. What do we got to be prepared for? What's the next thing? I mean, they're pumping it out that on Sunday, I guess, or sometime this week, there's this global intifada, this call for a global jihad, and kind of part and parcel with what we saw with like at the US Capitol. We saw a whole bunch of these pro-Palestinian protesters insurrect the Capitol grounds, very similar to like the J6, but not. And it just shows us like the double standard, right? But that was part of it. It was this idea of the Soros group, the guys that are the Black Lives Matter, these types, right? Putting out this call, they're all connected. The next step is trying to get people going, right? And that's what we saw with this hospital thing. It was just like right away there was protests all over in these major cities, these deep state run and controlled cities. We want to see what's the next couple of days, I guess, and just what's going on. What do we need to sort of, I don't know, stabilize ourselves around? What do we need to ground ourselves with? What can we do? So in the present, so past, present, future. And what we've got here is the Two of Wands. Okay, and this is like the setting up of, well, the beginnings of a structure, let's say, right? But it has a lot to do with the intention of creating a plan. Now, this guy is leaning on a pole, right? One of the wands, as he looks at the world, and it's almost like, I mean, especially in this reading, he's looking towards the past, okay? But it's like finding support, figuring out where can I find support to further my agenda, further my plan. So in a weird way, this applies to both. Like, because I mean, I did ask, like, what are these guys up to, right? What's their what's underneath the scene. It's so funny how he's holding a globe. And then maybe that's kind of what it is kind of going back into the old playbook, right? The whole thing is to shift the economy over, is to make this kind of shift so that they retain their wealth and we move into this kind of system that they want us to be in, right? That's a big part of it. I guess that's maybe what it is they're recognizing how their old playbook doesn't work anymore, okay? And in fact, like we're at this kind of end game scenario, and they're trying to figure out like, why isn't this working? There's something there that isn't sort of jiving in it, and it does have a lot to do with what I was saying at the opening of the video, the people's awareness and awakening the people. This is such a huge thing, and just the very fact of people communicating day to day is super important. That's what got shut down with COVID, was the dialogue and the manufactured division. That's kind of what they're operating off of, but yet they're trying to figure out like what it is, what's going to get us to kind of accept that we need to be sort of locked in, fearful, not sort of out in our world, taking part where it's necessary. It's more of just like not shying away from the world. It's just being in the world, still taking part in the world and wanting the simple things that bring goodness to life. And that's what we're fighting for. That's what we want. But all the efforts that all of us have done all over, man, they can doomsay and we can go through all sorts of calamity and catastrophe, but we're going to get through it. Yes, we can be sort of weighed down by the negative circumstances and the fear, but if we also look back in the past, there's always these moments where things come forward, okay? And that we're going to get through all of this. And that's what many of us, when we go out into our world, that's the message we have to carry, and not the fear-based messaging that creates division. So the magician's trick, the wizard's trick, that's the deep state wizards pulling their money maneuvers. Ooh, money maneuvers. And that's what this is all about. And that's what we're going to see next, right? We're witnessing a fundamental shift in the power structure. And that's, on many levels, there's not much we can do about it. But like, you got to keep in mind, like, these elitists and these groups in the power structure and in the apex, they fear us. And they want us as the people to be in a position where we fear them more. But they fear us. They know how the people on the grassroots level can affect great change. This is a global thing. This is definitely a global thing, and we have to be sort of mindful. Well, that's a big thing right now, all this money in the States, all being lumped together, part to Ukraine, part to Israel. They can't get the money because there's no House Speaker. And so that's the thing, is getting this House Speaker. And I guess that's one thing that we'll see is like, what is this, who's this next House Speaker? That's very telling of what's going to happen in some ways, just as far as like the money allocation and where the United States is going to go. But like, everything's being sucked into this war, into a war. The United States is really willing, there's elements in the United States that are really willing to jump into a war here. And that's what we're going to see. The other thing too is that all of this started to happen, the war, I guess, was sort of triggered around the solar eclipse, and that solar eclipse is a huge sign of war, this one especially. And it's kind of interesting, right? It shows us that there's things that are happening behind the scenes, but there's also things on higher levels that we have no idea. But that's what's actually afoot. So yeah, it's interesting. The eclipse cycle this time definitely has a lot to do with the sign of war and that motivation, or that feeling, like the inner fire, that angst that's been there for a long time is overshadowing the diplomacy and the relationship that people have with each other. But see, that's the thing, like, this is what I'm trying to say is spiritual warriors, the digital warriors, the patriots, these people, like we've been activated. So the war is on. And us on that side, we don't want war. Like, it's all about stopping their motions of getting us to war. And so that's also what this eclipse cycle kind of talks about. It's like the peaceful warriors, the spiritual warriors, the warriors of the light are kind of standing forward and blocking their manipulated diplomacy, the deep state, and their subverted sort of connections and their ideas of peace, because their ideas of peace actually is war. And it's like a 1984 thing, like from the book, right? Where war is peace to these people. And we have to sort of accept it. We have to see it, right? So yeah, beginning of the war, more and more. Okay, one more little one. What guidance do we need to hear? It's going to help us. People have been following my readings for a bit. This card keeps popping up a lot. Hope and vision are closely tied, like love and freedom. So we have to have a vision of what we are hoping for. That vision enables us to activate our will and act towards it and move towards it and do what we can to fulfill the hope. But without that vision, it's empty, right? This is what we've been dealing with in our society. We've been emptied. Going back to the beginning of the reading, like that Two of Wands represents who can we rely on and who will support us and who can we support. That's what we want to stick with. That's a big part of it. And that's like in our everyday world, and get active with them. You got to see the hidden hand underneath of it. Anything that's causing division right now is sort of like one of those things where you got to kind of take a step back from, because you're going to be inadvertently manipulated into something, because it really has a lot to do with dividing us. And there's been so many things put out there to divide, and they're like traps in waiting. Okay, that's a big thing. I mean, reserve judgment. You don't have to sort of jump in. This is what I'm saying, is like, realize you're already fighting a war. You're fighting against the deep state, the dark side, globalist, bad actor elements that have been exposed. That's what we're up against. I'm talking from a place where we haven't been attacked by extremist groups or anything like that. Hasn't happened yet, right? We're not at that stage here yet. This is what I'm saying. Could happen. We have to be prepared for that. But yet we could offset it by this kind of conversation, by this dialogue. If we start to shut up and just go within ourselves and hide away, they are going to censor and clamp down the entire internet. You won't be able to talk about this for the rest of your life. You won't be seeing me. Right? And that's not what's going to happen. See, and this is what this card is saying. The Five of Swords. Face it. Face the fear. Just get into, don't avoid the world right now. Yeah, this time for us is really about clearing the illusions that we've been under for a very long time. And so, you got to take breaks, and and there's some of us don't need to be sort of in the thick of any of this stuff, right? But it's really about clearing the illusions that we've been under for so long, to be able to sort of cut away elements in our actual life that no longer serve. People are awakening. You can't help but to sort of awaken to this. These are these kind of times where everybody's sort of being sort of put into the same scenario. That's what COVID showed us, and it's happening again. And we're all being channeled into this 2024 lead up. So a prayer of peace and healing and awareness for humanity, and that being part of that mantra, and getting into that frame of mind. Strive to be clearer. strive to access those levels of truth, like what we're talking about. Kind of switch it around and take charge of your reality. That's really what offsets and fights these deep state bad actors. All right, everybody, I think that's enough for today. I hope that was clear, and I hope everybody got something from it. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, leave a like on the video, and wherever you are, please take care, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.